Hello, listeners. This is Jim the Keys, Bartender, coming to you on a beautiful day, temperate day here in the Florida Keys. I hope it's beautiful where you are. It's late springtime. Late springtime. It is late. It's the last hurrah of spring before we go into summer. And for some of us, it involves a lot of heat and humidity, sunshine. Sorry about that. But for us here, it's always a lot of the same. A lot of the same. We just hope for sometimes, just like people in the desert, we pray for rain. Pray for a little rain. Vacationers could give two shits whether we have rain, but yep. It gets dry here for such a long time. You forget you're in the tropics. You think it rains all the time. It doesn't. There's days on end where we see no significant precipitation, and then there's weeks on end. Like I guess that would be like our monsoon season, like they're having right now in Bangladesh, Myanmar, India. So we actually look forward to that here. I guess when you have proper straight drainage and building codes and stuff like that, it doesn't affect you as much. I mean, there's still issues with driving. But I'm looking forward to a beautiful day. I got my mind right today. I went to one of my meetings. I start work at around 10:30. I should be out around there about 12 hours later. And I feel good. I had a good night's sleep. But one of the things that really get me onto the right track is talking to you guys. And recently, a lot of times when I do this podcast, and I told you that I'm switching podcast platforms, these episodes give me an opportunity to reflect. And hopefully, maybe some of the things can help you reflect. But I realize my issues aren't the same as your issues. But I'm hoping to be more, what would you call it? More in touch with some of the frailties in my being as a person. And one of those is know-it-allism. Know-it-all. I have to be right. I have a know-it-all mentality, and it's annoying. The actions and tendencies are around today. And how can I be a know-it-all? Because I don't really know everything about myself at this time. I'm still getting to understand this owner's manual, which is me. But I have a need to be right. And I know that has something, I know it's tied to my ego. Has to do something to do with the way I value myself, my self-worth. And there's a lot of times when I'm wrong. And it's very difficult for me to admit that I'm wrong. It kind of really punches a hole in that persona that I have, or I developed. That, I'm competent and I know. Well, there's a lot of things I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. When it comes to vehicles, when it comes to sports, I have a wide knowledge, a couple inches deep. Sometimes I have deeper knowledge. It goes here and there. And sometimes the confidence I display may be an expression of my fears that I'm not that intelligent, when I should just accept that. So I'm going to go through a couple different scenarios here, and these all happen at the bar. And I don't know, as a bartender, we all have a vision of what our favorite kind of bartender is if you do frequent bars. Some people like the stoic bartender that just sits there listening and doesn't impart anything. They're just recording it, looking at you, doing the things, doing their job. It's probably the most ideal. The ideal version of a bartender. And then there's the sage one. The sage. Meaning the wise bartender. You come up. You tell him your problems. He dispenses some advice. Which I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing. But then again, psychiatrists, psychologists, they all have their own baggage also. So we get to see, with the bartenders, we get to see, and people tell you, well, yeah, I talked to them. Yeah, they gave good advice, maybe not. You got to be careful with dispensing advice. And I'm reluctant to dispense it. I may want to try to give an answer, but I have a difficult time imparting advice. I'm getting kind of wishy-washy. I try to be hopeful and things like that. But when it comes to interjecting myself into conversations, I am the worst. I am the worst. If I hear something and something I feel needs to be said, I'll say it. I almost always say it. As long as it's not really out of my venue. If someone's talking about maybe it's their relationship, I don't even hear it. People talking about their relationship, I just hold out. I just look and judge like everyone else does. No, I try not to judge. I'm doing good. I'm trying not to judge. So one, I have, here's a scenario that displays what I'm like. A friendly acquaintance. I call him a friendly acquaintance because we're not really friends outside, but we are friends when they're there. I think this guy's thoughtful, intelligent, comes in young guy in his early 30s, by the name of Dallas, and we're hanging out, and he's well thought out, well spoken, and for some reason the subject of slavery comes up, the historical subject of slavery. We're talking about all types throughout history, and I made my statement that the South, the southern part of the United States, was the largest slaveholding system or chattel slave system that existed. Fully 1/3 of the residents of the South prior to the Civil War may have been chattel slaves. Well, Dallas interjected that Egypt had a larger one. And I was talking about there's certain types of slave. There's wage slavery and there's chattel slavery, and things like that. Chattel slavery is when you treat them like property. So I had this discussion. But I held on to that. And I had to go and make that statement. And then upon further research, it could appear that there's many societies, China, India today, where it's even larger in total number, maybe not as a percentage of the population, as a percentage of the population. In the Caribbean, which was at the similar time, actually been 50 years earlier, 60 years earlier than when it ended in the American South, they had a higher percentage, we're up towards 80 to 90%. But that's not the point. The point is, I felt the need to interject myself, and I don't think there was solicited. I wanted to make a statement about slavery. For some reason, we're talking about maybe about the Confederacy or something like that. I brought it up, but I had to do it. I had a hard time accepting it in that disagreement, even though when he started speaking, Dallas, and explaining his side, I realized, I said, he may be right. He might be right. And the other ones, I'm not going to give you specifics on the other ones. Maybe. One of them is religion. Someone speaking at one of my meetings, and we're talking about how blessed they were and how God likes them. And that God will bestow blessings upon you if you're doing these things. And in my head, all I'm thinking, I said, well, I guess all those kids that got killed yesterday, or, or get cancer or die in fires or in war, God doesn't like them. You know? I guess that baby, God doesn't like that baby. Maybe didn't do enough. He's pretty good. You know, and here I am with my moral superiority shitting on someone's belief system. I need to be right. So I'll go and say that. I need to write the moral philosophy or the outrage. Politics. Why in hell at the bar someone starts, for certain people of certain ilk, right? It happens on both the left and the right. But I have a tendency to think it's all a circle. It's all a circle. It's unhappy people airing their grievances. And I've been that unhappy person too. So you always want to kind of blame somebody. Right? I always need to blame somebody. On the left, it's corporations, it's institutions, it's institutional bias, and things like that. On the right, it's people being un-American, taking away your freedom, and all that stuff. So, at this time, though, I get, and this is what I hear, someone starts saying shit about something I feel I need to speak up for. Say, come on, that's enough. Not everyone agrees with you. Well, I'm free to do it. Blah, blah, blah. And then go and say, and then I get right into it, knowing full well that I'm going to piss that person off. I'm going to get worked up. I could do it right now. I could go on and say, I can lay out my arguments right now, and that person that said their shit, that takes a dump in my bar. That's what they're doing. They're taking a big steamy pile of dump, and we got to either let it sit there and smell it, or we got to clean it up. That's what it feels like when it's more like a fart. Because, yeah, it stinks when they're saying it. But if you just let it go, it'll eventually clear away. Well, I treat it like a big steaming pile of shit, and I need to clean it up and get rid of it, get rid of all traces of it. When it's more like, and it's more ephemeral. It just disappears, and you just go, okay. Yeah, I just say, that's good. You go, do you have enough? No. Well, you had enough here for that. Come on, move on. I could easily do that. You know what? I would feel better for that. But that part of being right, that knowing all the tendencies, that to kind of say, I'm right, you're wrong, and not being able to, not being able to accept the alternative, that you might be wrong, that you're not 100% right. It's called, here's one word. It's one word. It's called acceptance. Accept that these are these person's views, these are my views. And when people hear acceptance, they hear it as more like sometimes it's equivocating, it's surrendering, it's ceding the moral high ground. It's an admission that their worldview is correct and yours is incorrect. It's not that. It is not that. It's just a way. Acceptance is a way of life where you accept that this is the way it is now. And these are views that people hold. If they really want to know what your views are and they're really open to it, then they'll have a discussion about it. But most of the time, people don't want to have a discussion about it. All they want to do is spout their feelings, not be open to the possibility that what they think doesn't have any basis in reality. And that very well could be me. That very well could be me. And that uncertainty sometimes, or acceptance, You say, well, this guy's kind of wishy-washy. Doesn't stick to his guns. Well, lots of people stick to their guns. Not James Earl Jones. Guy in Georgetown, Guyana, Jim Jones, the leader of his cult, he stuck to his gun, and so did about 600 to 800 of his followers who drank the Kool-Aid. They literally drank poisonous Kool-Aid laced with, I think it was cyanide, back in the early 80s, late 70s, in order to defend their beliefs. And so did, people like Adolf Hitler. There's just people, they go down with their belief system. Instead of saying, well, there's a possibility that it could be wrong. And there's some of them that are very important to maintain. Maybe it is actual physical freedom. When you're defending your land, you're defending your family. Yes, there's times to stand your ground. But there's other times when you need to just depart the field. It doesn't serve any purpose in the end. You're causing animosity. You're not increasing the general well-being of the people around you. You're not increasing your well-being. Sometimes it's all right to say, you know what? You may be right. We will not. This is all a matter of opinion right now. So I think it's important for people like me, or just let me talk about me, to not always assume that what I have to say, whatever golden nuggets are dripping from my lips, are set in stone or correct. It can't be. In the Catholic Church, there was a lot of dispute over the Pope's infallibility. When he issues a papal bull or an encyclical, it's considered something solid and tangible in the teachings of the Church, meaning if they say something while professing that this is the voice of the head of the church on earth, then it's more solid. But if he goes and says something in a sermon, and it's not considered that. It's not considered infallible. They talk about infallibility, meaning, but it's only during the encyclicals and these papal bulls, they call them BULS, LLS. And I think they're, it's kind of crazy to go and say, listen, this is what God wants. Because you can pretty much tell anybody when you say, this is what God wants me to do. Because people have done a lot of crazy things that say, this is what God wants. This is what you want me to do. When someone's under a deep psychosis, sometimes they could imagine that they have a relationship with someone that doesn't really exist. Like a stalker. Sometimes religious people are kind of like stalkers. But I'm going off on a tangent. But when it comes to religion, politics, lifestyle, there's people out there that have a certainty of what is right and wrong. Where some issues in life aren't that cut and dry. Are not that cut and dry. There's we get confused because we extend these things of certain line of what's right and wrong, like kindness to children, feeding, caring, nurturing. There's a right side and there's a wrong side. It's pretty easy to understand that you want to be able to house, protect, nurture, educate, nourish, nutritionally. And nurture is more emotional and psychologically. But then there's more nebulous things. It says, well, if you have a child, you're going to have to raise them in different cultures. Hasidic Jew, strict Muslim, Roman Catholic, born again. Now that's where the things where we all can kind of disagree on. But the people inside those religions will not disagree. No, this child has to be raised this way, or that's it. What's the purpose of them? They're not either they're inside or they're outside. So that's one thing. Same thing with politics. If you don't agree with my political leader, then you have to be a communist, right? If you don't agree with mine, then you're fascist Nazi. All or nothing. There's no redeemable quality. If you're on this side, you're selfish, faux patriotic, right? Violent, and disruptive. You're on this side, on the other side, you're a libertine. Baby killer. And then both of them say the state's going to try to control you and stuff like that. Where one for negative, one for positive, and the same for the other side. Lifestyle. Relationships. No, you can't be gay and have a relationship. It's only a heterosexual relationship. That's one side. There's only two genders. There's no room for misunderstanding. And you're either celibate or in a heterosexual relationship inside of marriage. Right? And on the other side, the extreme is everything can go. Right? There's no room for in the middle. And I guess when I talk about being all right and all wrong, it's being a moderate. Being a moderate personality. Being able to see both sides. And unless there's an overwhelming evidence to support something, you really can't be sure. A lot of times you have to make a decision on when you don't have all the information. Right? If you're buying a used car, you're buying a house. We try to get all the information when we're buying it. Like you have Carfax when you're buying a car. That's when last year, or a year and a half ago, when I was looking at a new car, I went and did a lot of research. But I didn't have everything. I didn't have all the information I had. I had no idea what would happen to the vehicle after I purchased it. I wasn't even exactly sure how I'd feel about driving, how physically I'd feel. It turns out I'm pretty happy about that. But houses even more so. When people buy a house, they research mortgages, they have to do a house inspection, they should be looking at the neighborhood, checking out their neighbors. If you have kids, you check out the schools. But you really don't know everything. You can say, well, this is the right house they had. It's going to be perfect and all this stuff. You don't know. The neighbor. Your neighbor could be one. They could be loud. They could work night shifts and come home and drink all night. Or they could have loud arguments and you can hear them. It's impossible to get all the information on certain things. When you get down to the basic answers, it's probably more easier to get that, right? When it comes to math, 1 + 1 = 2. When you're thinking of a computer, you have binary code, zeros and ones. That's it. That's all there is. And when you get down to the basis of atoms and molecules, that's what that molecule is. That's what that atom is. This is how they react with each other. It's just so hard for some people to admit they don't really know. And that's was a difficulty of mine. It still is. I'm working on it. But I imagine whenever we go to experts, purported experts, we're going to go to doctors, we're going to doctors with the wife, dealing with her cancer scare, doing a mop-up operation with that. And we're talking to doctors, and some of them, they're not sure of everything. They can tell you likelihoods. They can tell you percentages. One funny thing did occur was someone said the likelihood of that is less than 0.1%. And I said, oh, okay, 1 in 1,000. And the person looked at me and said, I don't even think it's that high. I said, well, it's a little less than 1 in 1,000. She goes, no, 0.1%. I said, 0.1% is 1 in 1,000. 100% is, if you have 100 items, that means certainty. 1% is 1 out of 100. You move the decimal to the left, and that's 1 out of 1,000. It's always that way. And I was a know-it-all for that. I said it to a nurse practitioner. I didn't feel good about that. Because, first of all, that for some reason I said, wow, why am I doing this? Person came into the room. I knew enough about it, but I wanted to tell the wife. I said, 1 in 1,000. Well, geez, that's good, really good odds. That's great odds. You know, that's what I wanted. That's what my ultimate goal, but the way I presented it was, fucking you, it's 1 in 1,000. And then I needed to be right. Because I'm thinking, well, Jesus, maybe I got that wrong. It's 0.1%. You know, it's 1 out of 1,000. My dad and I had this discussion, and this is when we're going to be closing it up. My dad is, for some reason, I didn't pick up all the things from my dad that I should have, and one of them was a moderation. Being a person of moderate taste. I drank too much. I'm very opinionated. My dad's opinionated, but he understands when he's talking to people that they have a strongly held belief, and there's no reason to always try to shit on that. So we have discussions from time to time, and I can disagree with my dad sometimes, but a lot of times we're on the same page with things. For an 80-something-year-old man, 81-year-old man, he certainly has very moderate and open views to life. And I admire him for that, and I think a lot of it has to do, a lot of things that I have, tendencies I have, are directly attributable to my father's demeanor to things. I wish I could be more, what would you call it, even-keeled, not less impulsive, because I am an impulsive person. If we had the biggest difference between someone, my impulsivity probably is the biggest difference between us. And if I could ever, it makes who I am. But that know-it-allism, for me trying to know something, and it says I may know something more than someone else. I play trivia, and sometimes when I hear a question, I can be certain of the answer, and then sometimes I'm thinking of it and I say, man, I'm not too certain about this. I appreciate that time because I realize I'm working towards something. People say, hey, Jim, maybe you're not working towards something. What you're working towards is dementia. Because you used to be certain. Well, I've been certain about things before. Absolutely certain, 100%. I was wrong. Memory is a weird thing. Very weird thing. So, needing to be right, I'm working on that. I'm not working on the need to be right. I'm working on a need to alleviate that. Well, I'd like to thank you for listening. I will be back again. Today is Wednesday. I got a busy day tomorrow. Hopefully I can get another episode in tomorrow. We can talk about something new. If you're interested, you don't have to listen. Because remember what I said, I'm not always right. So take care and have a great day.